Should be looking at you. Right there.
You can look there. Or either one. All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to Public Relations Society of America, Nashville Chapter Diversity Chat. I'm Ivy Johnson, Diversity Chair for our chapter. This chat is about online discussion about diversity and inclusion initiatives in the communications industry. This is our last chat, and this is the first time we're just trying Facebook Live. So please send in your comments and questions during the live feed. Our guest today is Javier Solano, and I'm just going to read a little background on him. Javier Solano has 15 years of experience managing marketing communications campaigns, including award-winning efforts on behalf of the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Department of Labor, and the Metropolitan Nashville Airport Authority. While at MP&F, McNeely, Pickett, and Fox, Javier has received the Staff-Selected Best Writer Award 4 times and the MVP Award twice. He is a frequent presenter on communication strategies, including media relations and Latino outreach. He is also one of the staff's media trainers, leaning on his 10 years of experience as a reporter, mostly with the Orlando
Sentinel.
Thank you. Before his arrival at McNeely, Pickett, and Fox in 2011, Javier worked for 2 Chicago Tribune-owned newspapers. Most recently, the Orlando
Sentinel.
Thank you. Where he covered sports and general assignments for 6 years, both in Santa Marta, born. I didn't have coffee on National Coffee Day. I'm sorry. Born in Santa Marta, Colombia, and raised in metropolitan Washington, D.C., Javier graduated from Columbia University in 1989 with a bachelor's degree in English. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you, Ivy. That was good. Very well done. Hi, everybody.
So let's just jump right on in.
Okay.
You were originally a journalist. What made you switch to public relations, the dark side?
Oh, well, all right. I wish I could say it was because I was smart and I saw the writing on the wall for the industry with it about to contract. But I'm not that smart. You know, really, it was a combination of 2 things. I was starting to get burnt out a little bit on the profession, and my wife hated Florida.
Okay.
So, yeah, maybe a nice place, wrong time in our lives. So we were open to shutting things down and making a new start. Before we did that, my wife and I had the opportunity to spend most of the year 2000 backpacking across Europe, staying in hostels and campgrounds and whatnot, which was an amazing experience and also gave me about an 8-month period to figure out what I was going to do next. My wife kind of made the decision for us because she got a scholarship offer from Vanderbilt Law, and that's what brought us to Nashville. So then it was, all right, what can I do in Nashville? The first place I checked was the Tennessean, but the way the media carousel goes, when you give up your spot there, it's not always a guarantee that you're going to get it back. Especially in a sports department, which is where I did the most of my work, and generally there's less turnover there. So, long story short, the Tennessean was willing to take me on as a part-timer, but my wife was in law school. I needed to generate a little bit more money, so I started asking around. I had a couple of contacts in Nashville, and many of them told me about one agency in town that was generating a lot of heat, had very good people working for it. And where the leadership had some of my skill set. So that's when I started to take a look at the dark side, and it's a pretty common move. A lot of people go from the media into public relations. I had an internship in college, so the subject matter I wasn't totally cold entering this, but that internship was a long time ago. I think I got into a lucky situation at MP&F in that the leadership there, the partners there, many of them were reporters like me. So I was able to come in and provide some value right off the start because I had some media knowledge. And then the other stuff I'd have to either learn on the fly or fake as best I can. And, I think I've managed to do that. I've learned a lot of things in the last 15 years about the PR industry and, and I'm still employed after 15 years, so I feel very fortunate,
Yeah.
and to be working for good people. So the two jobs have a lot of related skills, but they're very, very different. The reporting, you spend your lifetime really kind of chasing the truth, and in PR, you're basically chasing a client's version of the truth, and those aren't exactly the same things. But I've had a chance to work on many, many worthwhile causes since I've been employed at MP&F, and I truly think this agency and many others in the field of PR have played a big role in the rise of Nashville that we've seen in the last generation. So I'm fortunately and happily in the dark side, but I will say I was really happy to have those 10 years as a reporter. It's an incredibly difficult job. It's very rewarding. It's not a job where you get a lot of love. You get a lot of enemies doing it, and it's incredibly important. So I say all these things with a sort of bit of sadness that the media has contracted, especially in print newsrooms with which I'm most familiar. But it's also an exciting time for agency people because man, the amount of levers that you can press today that you couldn't 20 years ago. So much of what we do is about content creation, whereas so much of what we used to do was about funneling information to the biggest megaphones in town, in other words, the media. So really both disciplines are at play in today's world. So sorry, long-winded answer, but yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
I love the answer, though. I'll take long-winded. So.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to mention, he is the vice president, one of the vice presidents at Matt Neely, Pickett and Fox. So sorry to forget that again. Always have coffee on National Coffee Day.
Yeah.
Currently, it is National Hispanic Heritage Month. As someone that's Colombian, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you, especially when most people try to say the Latino community or certain communities are just all one demographic when they're all different?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm going to give you probably a really complicated answer. I think one thing, here's the disclaimer part, all right? I'm speaking from my own experience, and I don't really probably speak for all Latinos because, as you suggested, within that big bucket are many, many different strands. We're all coming from different countries, different levels of acculturation. So, I don't read very Latino. I can show you my mochila that I've got over there, which is kind of a prop that helps identify me as Latino, but I'm not going to do that here. We don't have much space in this window.
Yeah.
But I've got light skin, all right? I speak without an accent. I've grown up here in this country in a life of privilege that may run counter to most people's perceptions of what a first-generation Latino looks like in this country. So I say all that as a disclaimer to go, within the Latino community are so many different voices, so many different colors, so many different experiences and stories. There is a lot of common ground, mostly among, I'd say, a shared origin and some shared values, maybe a shared way of thinking about the world. So there is some community there, but you can read my voice, even though I'm first generation, as probably typical of a second generation Latino in this country. So now to get back to your question, what does all this mean to me? I grew up in D.C., and it wasn't like when I grew up in D.C. I was going, wow, I really live in a very diverse place. It was normal. It was, yes, my family we had a bunch of, we are the first Latino family to be invited here and the first to do that, but really it was a very diverse place to grow up, many different languages, many different cultures represented in D.C. So that was normal. And I went to college in New York City where you get more of that. And maybe more on point to your question, it seems like a weird segue, but I love the subway. I've always loved the subway for many reasons, but one of the reasons I love the subway and like traveling that way is, that you're riding with America when you're in one of those cars, all different shapes and sizes and colors and different languages being spoken and different experiences. And I can't explain why, but I feel very, very comfortable in that environment. You know, so it's something that if I'm a part of diversity, however you want to define it, it feels comfortable and it feels natural to me. And in another way, it's really, I kind of think, a defining component of what it means to be an American. That we're doing this great big experiment to see whether all the people in the world can get along together if we confine them to borders. So I think there is a little bit of that in it too. But I think diversity and inclusion, which, you know, I guess we'll get to in a second, I mean, these are two separate things.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I think it works best when one goes with the other. So I would say it's important to me. It feels normal to me. It's real exciting to be in a place like Nashville that I think is kind of generating a lot of energy in these areas and sorting out some of its own issues with regard to inclusion.
Gotcha. Thank you. Now, there we go. This past May, you wrote a piece for the Nashville Business Journal called Diversity and Inclusion. Nashville is a tremendous success story for some. You mentioned that our new mayor recognizes more diversity is needed in the city and has created a new diversity advisory committee and created the position of Chief Diversity Officer. Do you think these initiatives can help bring more diversity and inclusion to the workforce, specifically public relations, or more should be done?
Yes, to answer your question, these things help. And, you know, I really want to applaud the efforts of Mayor Barry and Mayor Dean before her by bringing this to the level of conversation that we're seeing in the city. Does more need to be done? Yes, absolutely. And I think there's documentation on this. If you want some numbers, I encourage you to read the Inclusivics report, which is on the Metro government website, about kind of where we are on some of these issues. But I think these are tremendous steps in the right direction, and I think sometimes a lot of us that feel like we are in the minority or represent diverse voices want things to happen obviously as fast as they possibly can. But, you know, and I can't speak to the African American experience in the city, which is very different from the Latino experience in the city. From a Latino perspective, I think it's important to remember that this is an audience that just got here, really within the last generation. And what you arrive here with as a first-generation American, and many second generations too, you're lacking a network. What you're missing out on is somebody to make a phone call on your behalf to a CEO saying, hey, will you take a look at this person, or just can you do me a favor and just interview this person, or, you know, hey, I highly recommend, you know, you're missing that level of benefits that networks can provide. So the fact that Latinos might be a little bit underrepresented in certain positions of power in Nashville is no surprise to me. It takes that sort of thing, I think, takes time. And I'm confident that Nashville will get there. This is a city of very warm people, good people. Hospitality is one of its big calling cards. And, you know, I have drunk the Kool-Aid, okay? So it's one of the reasons why I'm still here and not 3 years of my wife's law school and out. This place has a certain magic to it, and I'm confident that whatever problems of inclusivity that we have, that those things will sort themselves out in time. Leadership can play a role in that, and certainly you and I can play a role in that, and you can play a role in that. So, so anyway, does that answer the question?
Oh, it does.
Okay.
Yes. Now, also in your piece, you mentioned how diversity and inclusion positively impacts the bottom line. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yes, recruitment, retention, business development. And I can take each one of those things separately, but if those things all revolve around a theme, I think you should look like the people you serve. And I think you can make that general statement in just about any industry. On the recruitment side of things, if diversity is within your workforce and it's important to you, on a recruitment level, it expands the universe of people that you can look at and brings you more applicants. On the business development side, if you have a diverse workforce and one where an inclusive environment, I think this increases the world of places where you can prospect for business. You can go after a big contract maybe in a very, like, say, African-American heavy city like DC. You know, you can go after that contract for marketing services to provide support to an HBCU. You can just do more things on the business development side of things. And then on the retention side, and I don't have any science for this or numbers on it, it's just the sense that millennials and younger enjoy their workplace a little bit better if it's diverse and inclusive, and they like to be a part of that environment. I represent Generation X, one of the lead I guess, years of Generation X. You know, and I don't want to make sweeping generalizations about generations, but I think that a diverse workplace tends to be a happier workplace. Okay. However you define diversity. Is it color? Is it diversity of thought? I just think it makes it more energetic and interesting. I think those things are very important in a field like public relations that depends on creativity. So I think it'll impact your performance a little bit, and that's the thing I didn't mention. There's recruitment, there's retention, there's business development, but I think in what we do, it also increases your creative potential if you're bringing in different voices from different experiences and different backgrounds. So anyway, that's how, and all those things lead to more money. You know, that, you know, so I mean, I do believe that ultimately the reason to do all of this, the thing that trumps everything else, is that it's going to help your bottom line. Okay. For all the reasons I mentioned.
Gotcha. Good stuff. I totally agree. Now, your agency, McNeely, Pickett & Fox, has a diversity fellowship program. Do you think programs like this can solve the lack of diversity and inclusion in the communications industry? Yeah, it's part of the solution, and this is credit where credit is due. This is a PRSA suggestion. This is one of the things that PRSA recommends to anyone who wants to diversify their workforce, is the idea of a fellowship. And just for everyone out there so that they understand, the difference between a fellowship and an internship is length of time. Look at this as a longer internship, one where you have a lot more connection to mentors, and one that has at least the promise of a full-time position at the end of it. Not a guarantee, but the promise. So if you look at internship as a whole, as a pipeline for your entry-level workforce, then yes, the idea of a diversity fellowship, about being intentional with your internship process, is a good one and part of the solution. It doesn't begin and end there with creating the thing, because once you've created the thing, then you got to tell people about it. And that involves, where are you looking for new employees? Well, if you're struggling with diversity in your workforce and you're looking in the same places that you've always looked, you might not be moving the needle very much there. So I think that, along with telling people about it, in other words, promoting it, you also have to focus on
the retention side of things, and this ties into inclusivity, I think. If you have diversity within your ranks, but that diversity isn't reflected in the leadership, in the decision making, if they don't have a voice, if the culture isn't in your workplace isn't welcoming, well, you're going to have a hole in your agency where, yes, you get people in, but they may not stay with you very long. So you see how I think a fellowship is one thing, is one component of a plan that probably needs multiple components.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers the question. I mean, the answer is yes. Good idea. It's a start.
Okay.
It needs to be supplemented and reinforced by other things you're doing for it to work, I think.
Gotcha.
We've had a lot of success with it. And I want to, there's one person at our firm who basically created our diversity plan and has been the key driver in implementing it. Her name is Erin Mercer. She's not a partner at our firm. The partners were very receptive to her work and her ideas and certainly have implemented what she wanted to do. But this is where all this started. One person trying to make a difference and trying to think through some issues to help her workplace become more diverse. So I think maybe the moral to that story is, if you are waiting for your leadership to do this, maybe you'll be waiting not very long, maybe you'll be waiting a long time.
Okay.
Make it easier for them to take action on this sort of thing. So that involves many things. It involves doing the research into other diversity programs, and that's what Erin did. She took a look both locally and nationally. She took a look within the PR industry and beyond the PR industry, looking at companies that are really leaders in this space.
Okay.
And those were all the sources for her in developing a plan for us to act upon. And I would say since we started our diversity fellowship in the spring of 2015, we've had, I want to say, over 100 applicants for it. We've made 5 new hires because of it. And we're getting interest and applications from places that we didn't hear from before.
Oh, okay.
And, so this is a slow roll. Listen, there's more to be done here. But, we're rolling.
Gotcha.
We're moving. So I think little successes like this generate more.
Okay.
I think it's easier to recruit diversity when you've got it. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Now I see our president's on, and we have a couple people on. If y'all have questions, that's coming up very soon. So please get ready for any questions, comments, or just send us. Oh, I see a like. Who liked it?
What is that?
Oh yeah, they can
Okay.
like it. They can heart it. They can like
Okay.
it appears. So that's what
Okay.
makes this kind of funny.
Okay.
Oh, Amanda says she loves Erin. I love Erin Mercer too. Kudos to Erin. If she's watching, she said she'll try.
Yes, much love. She may not be able to join us today, but I really want, a lot of our efforts at our firm, again, it's really one person can drive this thing, guys. And then, it was important for her to get support. You need that support internally, but she got it because a lot of us wanted to go in this direction too.
Good.
And it takes management who also want to go in that direction.
Yes.
So I really want to thank the people who pay my check and whose names are on the door, because it would be easy for them to not move in this area. But, I think they, like everybody else, you're looking at the demographics of this city, and you're looking at diversity and inclusion as a tool that really kind of will help you generate more money for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff makes sense.
Gotcha. So let's see. How do you feel about inclusion being added to the conversation?
I think it's important because, they're not the same thing, diversity and inclusion. Nashville is a very diverse city.
Mm-hmm.
We've got strands of different cultures coming from many different places. It's really an interesting mix of people
Mm-hmm.
that are here. you and I, are kind of representing two different populations here, but, the rising Asian community, the Kurdish population,
Yes.
it's really, it almost like, go figure, really? Nashville has this amount of diversity? It does. Is it an inclusive city? That's another question.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be, really hard on people because, again, I think there's a magic to this city. I love this city. Everyone's very nice. But, in some areas, in some places, it doesn't necessarily pass the eyeball test.
Yeah.
When you're walking around downtown, when you're sitting in a board, and that's why these avenues that the mayor is creating and Mayor Dean before her are very important because they're trying to basically create more of a pipeline that way. But yeah, I think that's the work of Nashville, part of the work of Nashville, and also it's part of the work. I think we all need to be mindful that as this city is changing. And that's incredibly exciting to us. Its change is, generally speaking, terrifying to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of this conversation where you can look at Nashville and say we have more work to do on the inclusivity front. There's also an element where I think we need to be mindful that change is happening. We're in the middle of it. And that change is scary to a lot of people. So I don't know whether I'm advocating for a softer approach or what, but I don't want to be too hard on Nashville on the inclusivity front. I think that this mayor and the previous mayor have given the right language to it. They're speaking to it because they know that this is an area where the city has room to grow.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have a lot of more kudos for Aaron? I think you should. Oh, and someone had a comment. Nicole Bloom said, "I think you should look like the people you serve." Love it. So a lot of comments. Oh, and my mom's on the line. Thank you, Mom. And
Hi, Ivy's mom.
Yvonne says it's interesting. Appreciate that, Mom. So we're gonna move to the next question. Why do you think diversity and inclusion is important in public relations?
All right, so what we haven't talked about in terms of the eyeball test, we talked about Nashville. Let's shift the eyeball test to PR. This is a really, really white line of work. And I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying that. I think the numbers kind of bear it out. I know that PRSA did its own internal survey of membership back in 2010, and I apologize if these numbers have shifted, if there's been a more recent one. I think at the time in 2010, Latino membership within PRSA represented about 3.5%. And just to put that in perspective, in the country, Latinos represent around 17-18%. That's roughly about 1 in 7, I think, 1 in every 7. So there's a gap there. And I think on the Latino side of things, I think it can be explained in a couple of ways, or at least I have a theory about that. Oh, by the way, just to give you more credible numbers, before I came here, I looked up the numbers on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wonderful Department of Labor website, and I just looked up what the numbers were for 2015.
Okay.
Latino representation in 2015 within the PR industry was about 5.5%. I want to say that for Asians, about the same, 5.5%. African American, probably double that, a little bit over 10%. So there's an aspect of this industry that, and it's making wonderful efforts to try to be more inclusive, but, it's not the most diverse industry as a whole. On the Latino side of things, the way I explain it, it's kind of a complicated answer, but, I think part of this is that, for first-generation Latinos in this country, it's hard, there isn't really an equivalent of this in their home countries, or it's called other things, or, and when many of them are making the journey, in other words, for many of them, and for their children, when you get asked the question at age 6 or 7, what do you want to be when you grow up, it's not going to be a PR guy. You know, you'll have the other responses, you know, a lawyer and doctor. So some of those soft numbers about Latino representation in PR, I think are part of it. Part of it is that it's an unfamiliar line of work. The other part of it is so much of what we do is language-based and writing-based, specifically writing-based. And it's kind of the last thing you master when you're coming to a new place and learning a new language. First, there's conversation. Then you turn to reading. And the last frontier is how well you write the language. So I can see where that would be a little bit prohibitive and might screen out some people who might otherwise want to do this for a living. And maybe even on the other side, for agencies and businesses who have PR shops, and if you have a standardized screen, like a test of some kind, you know, maybe the scores you're getting from certain candidates on the writing front might exclude them from consideration. So it's one thing to take a look at is your screen. I think there's great opportunity among second-generation Latinos and beyond because of the bilingual world in which they live. And I think there's a great need for that all across the South, but if you want to look at it just in this city, you know, 1 out of every 5 kids in Metro Nashville public schools is Latino. You know, and there is a shortage of teachers to serve that population, bilingual teachers, you know. So if you take a kernel of that and apply it to public relations, you know, you're looking at a city that, if you fast forward a generation, you know, it could be as high as 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 who live here and self-identify as Latino. I think for second-generation Latinos who are comfortable in a bilingual world, there's a tremendous opportunity to serve as connectors. So it's one of the things I talk about when I'm talking to the Futuro chapters at the area colleges, where you find a lot of the college-age Latino population, and they're looking for career direction and advice. I think there's going to be a great need for bilingual communicators and practitioners within our industry in this part of the country. You know, and really if you draw a big circle outside of Nashville, because that's where the Latino growth is. The Latino growth is NASCAR country. It's Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, especially the western part of the state. So I think it's a, you know, I don't know if we have any bicultural, bilingual folks on the line with us, but I think the world is yours in this industry if you want to spend time with it and pursue that as a career direction.
Gotcha. Good stuff.
But there's one other point to your question. I think it is vital that diversity and inclusivity is a part of, is a focus for PR. If for no other reason than, you know, we're communicators. And part of our work is to communicate to various audiences. And I think a focus on D&I helps you do that when you bring in more voices with shared perspectives and maybe even shared ideas. I think that helps you on the creative front in many ways.
Okay, good stuff. And I agree. More voices, the better to serve your customers. Now, is there any questions? Oh, we're having a lot of comments. It's true, and representation matters. Thank you, Mira. Thank you. So we're almost winding down. So if you have any comments or questions, keep on flowing them in, or even some emoticons, keep on sending them. Now, let's see. Can you share some tips to others in the industry who would like to bring more diversity to their team? Like, I know you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, but is there some, like, number one tip you can tell an agency or someone that just wants a more diverse communications team?
Yeah. Okay. You know, maybe, you know, I'll continue on the Aaron Love. since we've got some Aaron fans on the line. You know, I don't know whether she would say this, but I'll say it. Stop waiting for other people to make this change for you, and start thinking about what can I do to help make this change. That's what Aaron did, and that's what other people like Aaron in other agencies and other businesses with a robust communications operation are doing. That isn't a knock on leadership, or that's not to say that leadership is deficient in this area. It's just I point to Aaron as an example because it's an example of, it's an answer to the question, what can I do? I mean, you can do a lot. So I think one of the suggestions I would make for folks is believe that you can make a difference. But beyond that belief, there's a couple other things that you're going to need. You need a little bit of support around you. So share this as an initiative with others, whether it's line staff or whether it's your leadership, and try to get buy-in. Have a clear idea about why, and if you're looking for why, I think we've talked about the why here. And I don't think anything I said is new to anyone who's tapping into this chat. I think they all kind of believe the same things. So you get help, but also do the research. Our diversity program was built on the successes of other diversity programs. So, and it's also easier for leadership to make your proposal actionable if you kind of back it up and say, here's where I looked, and here are the ideas that I'm plucking from the places where I looked. And there are many resources for this sort of thing. PRSA itself is a resource for this, and there are many good ideas within PRSA about how to do this. So do the research, and then I think beyond that, just don't give up when things aren't happening fast enough. Keep going, keep working, keep making this a push. And again, a lot of this, I think, is taking an interest in new places to go looking for both business and employees. So, just expand your world of recruitment, and I think you're going to expand your world of business development too. So, anyway, I hope those are some things that might help get folks started. And many of you guys know Erin. I'm sure she'd be happy to kind of share her knowledge and her process. But I think I've hit upon some of the key elements of it.
Okay. Now it looks like we have a question from Nicole. What about people who aren't bilingual, thinking outside the Latino community? How can we find opportunity for those people?
Okay, there's since I'm kind of obliquely representing the Latino community, I turn to the issue of language because that's a pretty central issue for us. If you want to make yourself valuable in that way, it's easy to make a case for Latino inclusion in this city because you just show them the demographics. I think it's also, absent those demographics, if you represent a culture or an area where, we're not going to be 20% Mongolian in the year 2050. But here are some businesses that I could be the gateway for you, connecting you to opportunities, because I'm here. I was just having a conversation with a lawyer, who's, I believe his background is Kurdish, and opportunities with the Islamic community in Nashville, which may not be numerically strong, but may have some very important business components to it that need service. So, whatever population you represent, whatever voice you represent, including if you represent no voice at all, and all we're talking about here is the diversity of thought.
Yes.
I think there's something that you can offer to an agency or a business with a robust communications operation. Our biggest enemy, I think, in the world of PR is groupthink. And I think one of the ways that you battle groupthink is to have a workplace that reflects some diversity of thought and also provides avenues for that diversity of thought to be a diversity of voices, if that makes any sense. It basically gives that diversity some voice.
Okay.
So I don't know whether I answered your question, but I do think that, especially in the line of work that we're in, diversity of thought is very important. And an experiment I've always wanted to run is to, create a set of, create a case study of sorts, and give it to two populations. Give it to a PR savvy group, a bunch of communicators like us, and then pull together a control group of 10 people from outside the industry representing different points of view, different businesses, different layers of socioeconomics, and have them attack the same problem and see what they come up with.
Okay.
I'm not saying that control group will have a better solution than the PR group, but I will say that their answers will be interesting and might illuminate some different paths to get you from A to B.
Okay. Now, it looks like Nicole, thanks for addressing this. Wasn't trying to discount getting Latinos in our workforce.
No, not at all. I didn't take it at that at all.
I was trying to think of some other angles we can take, particularly for the Black community, which is, Nicole, thank you for talking, Nicole, but which is also strongly represented in Nashville, and language isn't a barrier for them. Well, thank you, Nicole. You actually have the most engaged chat that I ever had this year. So,
Good.
So you actually had a lot of people asking questions.
Good.
Any final remarks?
Let's see. I should have thought about a closing statement. Very bad PR not to come in with a closing statement. I really want to thank PRSA as a group for talking about this, and the Nashville chapter specifically for providing this forum and recognizing that that there's work that we all have to do in this area. But I think we'll get there, because I do truly believe that all of these things that we've been talking about here, the reasons for D&I, there's a great case to be made for D&I if you just want to focus on the fact that I think that's kind of what makes America, America, and that this is kind of who we are. And it makes a lot of people feel good. But if none of those are engaging enough to move leadership or to move an initiative, circle back to the bottom line, because I do think that a diverse and inclusive organization, almost no matter what line of work you're talking about, grows the bottom line for all the reasons we've talked about: retention, recruitment, business development, and in our business, creativity. So I think those are kind of your talking points, and this is an industry where it just doesn't make sense that it's a gated community. So I'm all for removing those gates, and my thought is that we're not going to be having this conversation necessarily in Nashville in a generation.
Okay.
And that already some great work has been done, and that there's certainly more to do. And to Nicole, it's funny, within this world of diversity and the diversity chat and D&I, you're lumping a lot of different groups together. And, I'm speaking for probably the second generation Latino experience. I'm not speaking for the African American experience, which is completely different, but of which I've gotten a little bit of an interesting window, because I have my two children are both adopted. They were both born in Memphis. Their ages 6 and 7. Both are African American. And it's funny. This is a little bit off subject, but I've never in my life, I don't think, felt like I was the victim of discrimination or I was denied access because of where I came from. But wow, as the parent of two African American children, I look for those things. I have my eyes open for more things like that. I'm almost looking more for abuse or doors shut than I ever have before. And I will say that the more you look for that sort of thing, the more you'll probably find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that's a downer of a closing note. Sorry about that, guys. But it's been an education, both living in this city, becoming more of a voice for the Latino community here, and being the father of two beautiful, wonderful children. I get a little bit of a window into the African American experience, but it's just the Latino experience from a color standpoint is so confusing because we're all between very light and very dark.
Yes.
About the color of coffee on National Coffee Day.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to that cup of coffee.
Me too.
Next, but and guys, if anyone has any questions of me, or wants to find out more about our diversity program, our website is mpf.com. If you click the careers button at mpf.com, you'll find information about our diversity fellowship program. I know that the deadline for applicants is April 15, and the fellowship begins in the summer. So if you have any interest at all, I encourage you to check that out. One cautionary note on that for anyone starting an initiative like this, I think it's important that whatever fellowship you create, that doesn't become, okay, this is the place where we put diverse candidates. And we're not necessarily looking at diverse candidates for our entry-level positions or for mid-level hires or whatever. I think it's important to, you have the fellowship in place, but don't close your eyes to these other opportunities, especially mid-level, upper management, entry-level. Don't let this become the beginning and the end of your diversity efforts. Let's put it that way. So.
Well, thank you. Oh, let's see. Leah says, thanks for sharing. And again, thank you all for watching. If you need to know anything that's going on with PRSA, please pay attention to this Facebook page. Also, you'll see Javier again if you come to our diversity panel in November. I think it's November 17th, but we'll have the correct information on the page as well. So thank you, Javier, so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. Okay. And thanks for joining everybody.
And everyone have a great rest of the day. Happy Friday Eve.
Yes.